This is TWiT. Surgeon General has warned that Taylor Swift may harm children and adolescents. Wait a minute. No, sorry. Social media. Although, Surgeon General, there are things in this world that could harm them much worse than spending a little time on Instagram. Dr. Vivek Murthy cited a profound risk of harm to adolescent mental health and urged families to freak out. No, to set limits. Okay. And governments to set tougher standards for use. He is the Surgeon General, Owen. I guess he's supposed to warn us about things like this. Seems like there are worse things in this world.
Well, this also seems like 10 years too late. I mean, it was years ago that a leak revealed that Facebook's own researchers had found that social media harmed adolescents. I mean, Facebook knew this and did nothing. So I think there's a lot to be said for it's time for government to step in, because the companies are, it's not like they're ignorant of the problem. They're fully aware of the problem. They don't seem to care. They don't seem to be willing to take the steps that might, cost them money.
Well, they shouldn't. I mean, this is their business. They're never going to admit, oh yeah, we're the, it's like fentanyl saying, yeah, I'm the problem. It's not going to admit it.
A Taylor Swift reference.
Yes.
Facebook looking in the mirror and saying, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
But I don't know if government is the right tool to fix this. Montana has signed a bill banning TikTok starting on January 1st. Is that the right answer?
Well, that's, that has nothing to do with protecting children, right? It's about performative geopolitics at a state level scale, which makes no sense given that our union cedes foreign relations to the federal government.
Right.
Montana should not be in this business, and it almost certainly violates the free speech rights of TikTok users in Montana.
TikTok creators and TikTok itself have both sued. It will, on First Amendment grounds alone, it'll probably get thrown out. Nevertheless, there are a lot of people that think TikTok is I think that, the question of whether a state should have the authority to ban an app is separate from, is that app actively harming people? I also think that humans are our own worst enemies. We will find ways to hurt each other, whether it's in person, in writing. The founding fathers used to rip each other, rip each other apart in pamphlets that they circulated. If you've watched Hamilton, you know a little bit about this. But to the point, aside from being a decade too late, I think there is a lot of value here to the Surgeon General, even if it doesn't lead to regulation, just saying this is a real problem. The flip side is that this horse is out of the barn. Teens are going to use social media. What we need to do is adapt to it and figure out how to get our youth in a healthy place where they can be on social media, know how to take it with a certain lightness and grace, and also behave appropriately, because a lot of the problem is teens bullying other teens. It's mean girls on internet on internet steroids. I have to point out the number one cause of death among children and adolescents in the United States is firearms. They're not doing anything about that.
I think the Surgeon General put out a warning about firearms a long time ago.
Well, firearms will kill you, so be careful. Yeah.
Yeah. No, about children. This is actually, it's a public health disaster. Firearms fall into that category. There's been a lot of efforts at state and federal level to declare it that. And it's funny, the social media thing might fall in the same category where it's we all think, or not we all, but a significant number of people think it's a bad idea to allow unfettered access. But firearms is a different issue in that regard. But how do you provide it how do you not do it something that violates the Constitution, whether or not you support the full range of it in the Second Amendment or really want it in the First Amendment?
Well, I guess you're right. TikTok is not protected by the Constitution, but the First Amendment does kind of cover this whole thing.
Corporate, this is the double-edged sword of giving corporate free speech rights, is that corporations have expanded rights and they they would have 20 to 50 years ago that allow them to defend themselves in that way. It's ironic when free speech maximalists are saying that corporations like Disney can't say what they want to say. It's sort of a funny thing. I mean, I guess it's always you don't need a freedom from repercussion is not what the First Amendment says. The freedom from government intervention and your right to have speech. But I don't know. I mean, we kept our kids off devices. They did not have full-time devices until they were in their early teens, and they didn't have access to devices overnight. And we set limits.
That's probably a good idea.
Contract with them that schools had suggested about usage, and a couple times they're like, "Oh, I set up an Instagram account without telling you." We're like, "All right, well, we're going to disable it, but we're not going to, what's fine." And so now, of course, when I got off Twitter, they both got on, both my 16-year-old and 18-year-old, just for the lulls. But they're mature enough to deal with it because they laugh at Twitter as opposed to are sucked into its dramas.
I would point out that there's an interesting new legal avenue for kind of like holding social media companies accountable for their actions. And it's not free speech because that's pretty cut and dried, and it's not Section 230 because that's proved very tricky to kind of take apart. And Mike Masnick, among others, has laid out a very strong argument for why you don't want to take apart Section 230 to go after social media companies. But product liability has been an interesting kind of legal tactic. Snap, for example, was found liable, I believe. I'm not sure if this was a final ruling, but in some early rulings in a case, Snap was found liable for creating a filter that lets you post how fast you were going when you took a snap.
Yeah.
Oh,
I used that on the bullet train in Japan, but also a number of people used it while they were driving.
Yes, and the plaintiff's lawyers argued that this encouraged people to speed, to kind of show off. And I think that, this could be, it could actually be a valuable corrective for people to pursue product liability claims against these social media companies to say.
Snap, by the way, discontinued that filter and probably would have even with absent a court case. I mean, I think these companies try. Snap does, I know. They try to be good citizens.
Well, I think, should it have existed in the first place? I think that
mistakes happen.
Well, Kara Swisher talks about how Facebook showed them, their live video broadcasting features, and she said, someone is going to shoot someone live on this, and they said, "What are you talking about?" That's like they didn't. It wasn't even conceivable to them.
Of course, she was right.
She was absolutely right.
Yeah. Jeff Jarvis, I'm going to channel our host from This Week in Google, posted this text from the Surgeon General 51 years ago. All the available statistics confirm the pervasive role television plays in the United States, if not throughout the world. More people own television sets and more people watch television than make use of any other single form of mass communication. The question of violence on television has been one issue that was raised almost immediately after television became a major contender. Warning about television. After that, they warned about video games, violent video games. There's always been a new cultural phenomenon that we old people look at and say, "You kids and your rock and roll, it's rotting your mind."
It reminds me the Pessimist Archive. That's all they do. They show a lot of that where they'll show how books were going to take down society.
Yeah.
Then it was radio. Then it was the bicycle. Yeah. So there is a certain irony here and we need to be careful that we're just now overreacting to what's new. But I think social media is clearly different in some ways, right? The fact that it instantly accesses millions of people and its ability to spread disinformation or violence. I even hate talking about the story a couple of weeks ago with the animal torture videos on Twitter. They took down their,
and no kid should ever see that. That's horrific.
Right. I mean,
that's worse than porn.
Just reading about it,
awful.
I had like PTSD for days.
Yeah, I didn't see it. Yeah.
Just reading about it was so disturbing. I couldn't imagine children who saw that stuff. And it's like, what do you do about that? Especially since currently, with Elon, I hate that we keep picking on him, but he has no reaction to this, right? It doesn't seem to be a concern. And then you have like with the Republicans, it's like, you have free speech and you can do whatever you want, but then TikTok's Chinese, so maybe we should ban it.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah.
it's all over the place. And meanwhile, though, and to be fair, in China, what do? Right? They ban social media. They don't let the kids on stuff. They are limited to gaming just for a couple hours a week, and they force the kids to learn stuff. And so their children are all like, focus, education, engineering. And our kids are just like on social media all the time. I mean, TikTok's not even in China. I always thought that was interesting.
Well, they have their own
version
of it. Yeah. Yeah.
But TikTok is for the rest of the world, right?
Right.
So it's sort of like it's a fascinating thing. And I don't, we had the First Amendment, so you can't just ban stuff. But
we should ban candy because it rots your teeth.
Right.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. No candy allowed.
Like as mayor of New York, Mike Bloomberg pushed the.
He didn't want bottles,
sugary beverage tax.
Pop. Yeah. Here, by the way, thank you for name checking the Pessimist Archive, Daniel. This is fantastic. Look at this one: Teddy Bears Doom Race. The teddy bear is not kidding. 1907. The teddy bear is a social menace, an aider and abetter of race suicide. We've always had this moral panic. I'm going to send this site to Jeff Jarvis. This is fantastic. Everything. Here's, comic books. Oh, my God. Good books called The Answer to Comic Book Addiction. Kids Today. Evil Communications. Comic books give tots bad habits. From 1949 and on and on and on. This is a great website. I don't think there's any
bad media. I think it's just bad parenting. There's my statement.
That's true too, right?
I mean, I'm being evil by saying that, but
it's reasonable, I guess.
Parent, but
if there's a hazard to all children that parents, may be having trouble dealing with, that the government could step in. You want to make sure you label Tylenol not appropriate for children under a certain age. I don't know. Tylenol. I literally have a friend who lost her daughter to Tylenol overdose.
Wow.
I mean, it's a deadly,
it's a
deadly medicine.
The parenting thing is true, but it's such a complicated issue, right? Because now, like when I grew up in the 80s, like I had a mom at home for a while. Like parents were allowed to parent their kids. Now everybody's so busy, and there's so much going on. Like even like both parents have to often work. It's like it's very hard for parents to be true parents in that sense. So I even that, I don't know they can do that. They can handle all this.
I don't know how women have survived the telephone. This is from 1917. Two talking machines, a woman and a telephone, are to blame for soused husbands and $4 potatoes. That's the explanation for wrecked homes and the high cost of living being given out by Mrs. John C. Bly, president of the Housewives League. So there you go. There's the problem, the telephone. I don't know. I make light of this. This is a great site. I could go on and on. I make light of this. It bothers me that the Surgeon General, thank God he's not the Attorney General, is focusing on this when there are so many other hazards to young people. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure.
We can, we can do more than,
we can do more than one. I agree. I agree. But I think it's overstating the case to say, for instance, the mental health issues in young women in America today are due to Instagram and Facebook. I mean, that seems a stretch to me.
Well, it's like accelerants are always a problem, and they're hard to measure because for some people it has no effect, and other people, it can be a devastating thing that they wouldn't otherwise have encountered. And so the question is the greater exposure to things that otherwise someone might not have seen, is that worse than in real life? If the internet didn't exist, would they be facing the same hazards at this time? You can't really do an A/B test on that. I mean, we talk to our children frankly about drugs, and it's like, we're like, look, fentanyl is a different category. So, Instagram and Facebook didn't exist when we were children, neither did fentanyl in this variety. And it's like, fentanyl is destroying people and killing people. And it's not like pot, or even, it's not even like heroin. It's not even like other of these super hard drugs when we were kids. some of which were circulating around. I knew people who were engaged with. It's like fentanyl is a whole new thing. So how do you respond to fentanyl? I think there is a little bit, not that Facebook is fentanyl, but it's like there is a little bit of that. Like, well, it's 1,000,000 times more powerful than the telephone,
than a comic book,
and it's free, and it's free, and your parents don't want you to do it. So
I think you did the very sensible thing, and we used to do that. We turn off the router at 10 p.m. because kids will, if they, it's addictive. I'll stay up all night if I start looking at Instagram. I can see doom scrolling and all that. And, there's certain things you can do. Fortunately, my kids are a little bit older. I didn't have the same problems. Dr. Murthy has also decried the public health crisis of loneliness, isolation, and the lack of connection in our country. I think that's true. I don't know if it's government's job to fix it, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, well, I think just highlighting it is important.
Yeah,
Professor Galloway, Scott, he talks about this all the time, and I think it's true. Between the pandemic and the changing social structures, and how men is being perceived. Like, there's a lot of moving parts here, and I take it for granted. I love working from home. I love being an introvert, being a shut-in. But I'm also in my 40s. I've done my time.
Right.
I wasn't like that in my teens and 20s. But if you're in your teens and 20s, those are formative years to build these skills out. And if you're not getting them, it's like it can cause a lot of problems. And there's that issue with, and I forgot the name already, but they have it in Japan with
pillow brides.
Yeah, well, it's called I forgot the name of it, but there's a name for it.
They don't leave the house. Yeah,
they pull out of society basically, and that's starting to happen here for different reasons. There's changing, and now you have steroid use going up in young men because of now it's like body image stuff going on with men too, because everybody wants to, they go on Instagram and they see all these guys who are jacked, and it's just like there's a lot of stuff that's going on, which is why I'm not a parent, by the way. Because even I'm like, well, next, I don't know how I would handle this stuff either. I think it's very complicated.
It's called.
And by the way, AI is making.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. AI is making all of that worse, right? All of the filters.
AI makes everything worse. Everything. It's called, and everything better too at the same time. It's so amazing.
Yeah. Oh, hey, that's a really nice iPhone you have there. You totally picked the right color. Hey, since you do use an iPhone and maybe use an iPad or an Apple Watch or an Apple TV, well, you should check out iOS Today. It's a show that I, Micah Sargent, and my co-host Rosemary Orchard host every Tuesday right here on the TWiT network. It covers all things iOS, tvOS, HomePodOS, watchOS, iPadOS. It's all the OSs that Apple has on offer, and we love to give you tips and tricks about making the most of those devices, checking out great apps and services, and answering your tech questions. I hope you check it out.